Chers auditeurs,
Dear listeners,
bonjour.
welcome to Comme d'Archi Podcast
Dans le monde fascinant des architectes.
and in the architectural projects.
Je suis Anne-Charlotte Deponte, passionnée d'architecture et docteur des universités en histoire de l'archi.
I am one of the spokespersons of Anne-Charlotte, who is a PhD in architecture history.
Merci
Thank you
d'être avec moi aujourd'hui.
to be with us today.
Et
And
maintenant,
now,
lundi en français, place au talent.
and Wednesday, let's talk projects. In English, of course.
Bienvenue dans Comme d'Archi.
Discover the first part of this two-part interview. Hello everyone. Hello Aldric Beckmann. Thank you for being with us today. You are architect. In 2 or 3 sentences, could you introduce us to your architectural practice?
Hello. I grew up in the south of France. I had the chance to pass most of my childhood from the Saint-Victor mountain, quite well known because it has been painted by Cézanne
Gauguin.
and Gauguin. But at that time, I never realized the chance I had to be there. But it printed a sense of beauty in my mind, a sense of wildness also, a sense of freedom that I kept for all that time, basically. After being graduated from school, I moved to Paris to study architecture. I started to work quite quickly in a workshop. The head of the workshop was driven by François Seigneur, quite well known for his French pavilion in the Universal Exhibition in Seville in 92, 93, I cannot remember. But I worked for him and I shared my time between school and his studio for 5-6 years. And I learned a lot between these two elements, basically. First, school, very academic, very classic, and the studio. It was a small studio. We were 4, 5, 6 maximum. So I was in the project, in his ideas. In his ideas, quite particular because François Seigneur was developing architecture, project for architecture, but also project for art. And I really enjoy the fact that the frontier, the limit between art and architecture was not that defined like everyone would like to imagine. I kept that also preciously for my own and private development. Because again, in Aix-en-Provence, I had the chance to grow up next to a painter, and at the beginning, I wanted to be a painter. But my parents decided differently for me, and architecture was basically a good solution to go to. But I kept painting. I still paint, I would like to say every day, but it's not the case. But the more for I can. And this link between art and architecture is very important. I consider myself as not artist, but plasticien. I don't know how do you say in English, but plasticien and architect. And I always develop project with this particular eye and attitude. For me, architecture is also a sense of volume, material, plasticity, and also a sense of program usages and responsibility. And these two has to live together and can be developed together. It's very important. When I drew because I like the fact that we can draw architecture. When I drew the project, which are quite well known today, like the residential building, dwelling building in Masséna, the east part of Paris, which is a tinted concrete building, I had always in focus these two parts: volume, material, plasticity, and usages, program and responsibility for the site, for the client, for everything, basically. So I keep going in that direction, trying to find solutions, whatever the scale, wherever it is. I had the chance to work in France and in Europe, but also different scale, to very domestic scale to very large urban scale. I tried to keep this focus on how architecture can bring a large mixity of usages, not defined yet, and trying to not define the project as far as possible, but also to insert this sense and this sensitivity in the research of material, in the research of the plasticity, to imagine that architecture can be something else than only a rational and elegant object. I think maybe I learned also this because after François Seigneur in Paris, I moved to London and I worked for William Alsop for 4 years in many different projects. But we had fantastic discussions with Will. And most of the time when we tried to work on, and we worked on project, he always answered, and I love this sentence, "It could be very nice, Aldric." And I remember that all the time. I mean, yes, it can be very nice. And I kept that in mind. And now I like the fact that maybe my architecture can be simply very nice, and it can be great, and it can bring to a client a certain art de vivre and elegancy that I try to provide to the program, to the client, to the site. And in this research of harmony, all these elements for me are essential to bring life, to provide hope in this moment of architecture. But architecture is life, so everything is combined together. And I can have my role like a chief orchestra to imagine that architecture is also part of how we can qualify the world in the one we are together, all together, that has to be rethought urgently. And that's why I'm waking up every morning, because I kept this positive energy and I really want to bring this energy to the studio, to the team. And that's why also I multiply today different action in terms of teaching, responsibility in consulting for the state, because I became architect conseil de l'État, which is basically a consultant architect for the state. But also I'm doing a large exhibition at the Pavillon de l'Arsenal in Paris for the common area in the collective building, residential building, and to represent the fact that architecture can be a sense of how to live together and how we should live together, which for me is more and more important these days. If we pay attention to the world which is around us, yes, we've got to change many things more and more urgently, not only the question of climate, but also the question of the ideas, the question of the way we can be together again.
Thank you, dear listeners, and see you next Wednesday for our new Kandarshi in English. Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you. Tune in next week for the second part of the interview.
Thank you for listening, and thanks to the sound engineer who was collaborating with us today. Don't forget to tune in to our previews on Instagram at Comme d'Archi Podcast. If you enjoy this podcast, don't hesitate to promote it by giving it 5 stars and a little comment on Apple Podcast or on your favorite podcast platform. And above all, subscribe to listen to all of our episodes for free. See you soon, and until then, take care of yourself.